Can I tell you what's been on my mind?
Hey everyone, and welcome to the Farm and Pastor's Wife. I am so glad you're here. Welcome to my kitchen down on the farm. We're gonna have a great time today. Today's video, we are going to take a trip down memory lane. One of the videos that put my YouTube channel kind of out there and caught traction was my 2-ingredient biscuits. When I uploaded that video, the 2-ingredient biscuits, I got tons of questions like, can I make it with a different type of milk? Can I make it with this? Can I make it with buttermilk? Can I make it with regular milk? So we're gonna do the 2-ingredient biscuits all over again, and we're gonna make it 3 different ways and see if you can make it with other milks and see which one is actually my preferred method and Bryant's preferred method. Hey, if you're new here, I am Leslie, my husband is Bryant, and we are thrilled to have you in our kitchen. So let me get everything I need and we will get started. So where this recipe starts is with self-rising flour. I did not realize self-rising flour may not be available everywhere. So let me tell you how to create real quick your own self-rising flour. You're just gonna need some baking powder and some salt and some all-purpose flour. So to every cup of all-purpose flour, you're gonna add 1.5 teaspoons of baking powder and 1/4 teaspoon of salt. So what you can do is just kind of put together your own container of self-rising flour. Just mix it up, make it, have it on standby. Thank goodness where I am at, it is widely available and I can just go and purchase a bag of self-rising flour, and that's where we're starting. So my original recipe will be linked down in the description below, or let me go ahead and give it to you. All it is 2 cups of self-rising flour and 1.5 cups of heavy cream. So that's how we're going to start making it today, is with heavy cream. I am cutting the recipe down since I'm going to be trying 3 different recipes of biscuits. So I'm going to cut my amounts down for the program right now. But the original recipe is 2 cups of self-rising flour and 1.5 cups of heavy cream. So, all right. Let's get started. Like I said, I'm cutting my recipe down, so I'm going just to 1 cup of self-rising flour. And since I'm cutting it in half, that means we're going to do 3/4 cup. Look at me going and doing my math. 3/4 cup of heavy cream. At least I hope that's right. Hope my math teacher isn't watching. All right, so here we go. Let me grab a utensil to mix with and we'll mix this up. So the one thing about this dough is it feels a lot different than other biscuit doughs does. It almost has a Play-Doh type feel to it. And let me just say, it depends on the humidity of your home. You may have to add a little bit more flour, but I usually do that as I'm kind of kneading it together and folding it over. So this, like I said, this dough has a kind of a unique texture. So I'll show you the biscuits when I get them cut out. So I'm just going to put a little self-rising flour on my board here, and we're going to take this dough, which is a little bit wetter than what I would like, and you always start with impeccably clean hands and surfaces that you're going to be working on. All right, so I just kind of like to roll this in the self-rising flour a little bit just so I can get it to where my hands are working it and it's not sticking to my hands. Now, I used to roll these out with a rolling pin, and I'm just kind of folding it over a few times because the more you fold it, the more layers your biscuit has, and it's just kind of wonderful that way. Anyway, I no longer roll it out with a rolling pin. I just soon not mess up a rolling pin. But I flatten mine out with my hand, and I go to about, I'm guessing, a 1/2 inch. All right, and I'm just gonna dip my biscuit cutter, which is it's not a must-have utensil, but it comes in handy. I used to use cannon jar lids to cut my, or the glass, a cup that had a perfect ring around it. And so I'm just going to cut, and I like to go straight down. If you are familiar with my channel, I say don't ever twist it, because that kind of seals the edges of your biscuit and prevents it from rising as well. So let me show you this. It's a much smoother dough, and it's just different. It's just different. And I like to put my biscuits kind of in, and it depends on what kind of biscuit you want. If you like crusty edges on your biscuit, you want to separate them on your greased pan. If you like a soft, fluffy, tall biscuit, you want to have them touching and surrounding one another. And I'm not going to waste this. I'm going to just kind of pat this back out and roll it back out into a shape and get probably 2 more biscuits out of it. So once I do that, I'll bring you back and show you how I'm going to place it on the pan. Usually with the last biscuit, I don't worry so much about cutting it out. I just pat it out and know that it's going to look a little different than the rest of them. And what I'm going to do, just because I'm going to try to do everything on one pan, I'm going to cut this one in half. And so I'll know this grouping is my 2 ingredient biscuits with heavy cream. So we're just going to take our pan here, and I'm going to place them up against one another as much as I can. I like mine soft and fluffy. And it always depends on what I'm going to be eating with my biscuit on how I like it. If I'm going to be eating it with sausage gravy, then I want a kind of a crustier biscuit, some texture to my biscuit. And I'm just cutting this one in half, and so we're going to do 2 halves. I don't know how that'll turn out, but that's just how that's how I know which grouping that is. But if I'm going to use sausage gravy, I want a kind of a crusty biscuit. If I'm just eating a biscuit as a piece of bread with my supper or whatever, or if I'm going to put some just hot butter and honey on it, or some apple butter, then I want a soft, fluffy biscuit. So if I want a soft, fluffy biscuit, I'm going to bunch them together. If I want a more crusty biscuit where it gets done around it's going to get done, but it gets kind of nice and crumbly, I'm going to separate them. Okay, so I'm going to grab everything I need for the next one, and I'll meet you back. So you can probably hear a fan running, and that is my stove running. Like I said, one of the questions I got tons of is, can I make it with buttermilk? Can I make it with regular milk? Can I do this? Can I do that? And I didn't know the answer because I had always just made it with heavy cream. So today we're going to try and find out. I have a feeling the amounts of milk may be different. And so I'm going to add the milk in slower and not just dump it all in like I did with my heavy cream. And we're going to see if it works. So the next one I'm going to make is buttermilk. And when I make other biscuits, I always use buttermilk. I poured way too much because I think it's going to take less, if anything, but we're going to see. So I'm just using the same bowl. We're going in with the same stuff. I'm going to add about half a cup to begin with. And we're going to mix that up and see where it's at. and then we'll keep mixing as necessary. It's definitely going to take more than half a cup. I thought it would take less buttermilk than it did the heavy cream, but it may take more. All right, let's go with a little bit more. All right, now we're at 3/4, which is where we were with the heavy cream. And I am just mixing this around the bowl, and if you do like I did and just added too much, it's okay. We can add in some self-rising flour. I got this way too wet, so I'm gonna add a little bit of self-rising flour. You can add it on the board as you mix, but I'd rather add it in here because if I add too much self-rising flour, I can always add a little bit more buttermilk. And I think I just added a perfect amount right there, or at least perfect enough for me to get it. Well, let me add a little bit more. That was probably a couple of tablespoons, and I'm going to add a couple more. And with bread making, it is very, it changes depending on, believe it or not, the weather, the humidity in your house. It makes a difference when you're making bread. So let's get our dough out. And so I added probably just, we're going to guess around 1/4 cup more flour. So that was probably 1 1/4 cups of flour. And I still have some in here, so. And I'm going to mix that in right here on the board. And this is a very firm filling dough. The heavy cream one is a very firm filling dough. This is very light and fluffy filling. So we're going to see how this 2-ingredient biscuit works with buttermilk. I have a feeling it'll work great because, especially a full fat buttermilk, because there's your fat concept or ingredient. Like the heavy cream is very full of fat. This is much fluffier, much softer of a dough than the heavy cream one. But the heavy cream one is a delicious biscuit. All right, and I'm just going in my flour here. Look how fluffy that is. We might get into this and prefer the buttermilk one. I did not roll these out probably quite as, I like to roll mine, or not, I say roll mine, but I don't roll it anymore, but pat it down to about, and if your dough starts to stick on the bottom, just take you a scraper, a knife, a pastry scraper, and just, you know, sprinkle a little more flour on your board. And like I said, I just keep folding it over and making more biscuits. So it looks like we're going to get about the same amount. And I'm going to, so we have a good idea, I'm going to butt them up together much like I did the other ones. And we'll know the ones in the middle are the buttermilk. And then we'll do, I always refer to whole milk as sweet milk. Do you guys refer to it as sweet milk? My husband said, well, the first time he heard me say that, he was like, what is sweet milk? And he's, you know, we're not from very different places. I was like, what do you mean, what is sweet milk? Sweet milk is sweet milk. All right, I'm gonna have to slide these over so we can get everything on one pan because I want to bake them at the same time. So here with the ones in half is my heavy cream. Here is the ones with buttermilk. Let me bring it over there to you so you can see the difference. Here is our heavy cream, much denser, heavier. These are very soft and very fluffy. And you probably don't know that unless you're feeling it. So, okay, let me grab everything I need for the next batch and then we'll be going in the oven. So we have one more biscuit to go, and that is with whole milk. Well, it's with regular milk. This is actually 2%. And so we are going in with 2% milk. I have a cup of self-rising flour, but let's recap before we go any further. The heavy cream biscuit was 1 cup of self-rising flour, and I used 3/4 cup of heavy cream. The other one, I used a little bit more than a cup of self-rising flour and 3/4 cup of buttermilk. So I would say it was probably a cup and a fourth of flour, but start with the cup and add if you need to. All right, so in here I have my cup of flour, self-rising flour, and I'm gonna start with 1/2 cup of milk, and we'll stir and see where we are. Definitely don't think I'm going to need all of that milk. Wow. That, I did not even need 1/2 cup. So we are definitely going to have to add more flour in here. In fact, I'm going to have to add a lot more flour. I'm going to scoop out another cup of flour, but I'm only going to go in with 1/2 cup to start with. And we'll see where we are. Okay, there we go. So you definitely do not need much regular milk. So let me get the camera over here and show you what the actual dough is supposed to look like. What you want is a nice shaggy looking dough, much like this. See how kind of shaggy it is? And when we start folding it and putting it together, it's going to come together. But there, it's very moist inside, you can see, but we're going to kind of mix it out here on the board, and so that's all going to come together. But this is kind of what you want your dough to look like before you start not really kneading it, because we're not kneading it, we're just kind of folding it over and cutting it out. Okay, so I have my dough out here on the board, and I would say it's going to be kind of a mixture of the two other textures. It doesn't feel quite as soft and fluffy as the buttermilk biscuit, but not quite as smooth as the heavy cream one is. So and it only took 1/2 cup of milk. That's crazy. So we'll see if they're as good as the other two. And it doesn't look like it's gonna, it doesn't look like they're gonna be as pretty. And believe it or not, even though I added a lot more flour, it doesn't feel like it's gonna be, if it's not gonna make as many biscuits. But we'll see. No, I'm only gonna get 3 cut out ones and 1 hand patted. So that's how we'll know it's the milk one, is I only got 4 out of it. And I kind of want to fold this over just to make it a little smoother on top. Like I said, these don't feel quite as pretty. All right, let's slide this out of the way. And we're going to put these down here. Okay. So here we have our regular milk, our buttermilk, and our heavy cream. So my oven is preheating to 450. I'm going in at 450. Pretty hot, I know. Usually I'm at 400, but today we're going in at 450. So let me grab, I'm going to get just a little dab of buttermilk. I like to top the tops with a little bit of buttermilk. Sometimes I do that, sometimes I don't. But let me grab that and I'll be right back. This does not count as one of the ingredients, by the way. This just, because it's not necessary. This just kind of gives it a pretty little sheen on top. Now I'm going to get some butter out and soften up some butter. Bryant, my husband, is at the farm, and I'm going to call him home to come have a little snack and a little taste test with me, and we'll determine out of these which ones we like the best. All right, so it's going in a 450 degree oven just as soon as it gets preheated completely. And I'm gonna let it go. I'll check it at the 10-minute mark, but it could be anywhere between 10 minutes and 15. You just don't want it to burn. Don't burn your biscuits. You can't burn your biscuits. Biscuits are too good to burn. So we will be back. I'm gonna get these in the oven. I'm gonna get my mess cleaned up, and I'll meet you back. Well, I believe I'm gonna get them out of the oven real quick, and we're gonna take a look. Here are our beautiful biscuits. Our heavy cream ones browned up beautifully, and these are our buttermilk and these are our sweet milk. I don't know. I have a feeling I'm going to be a heavy cream girl, but we'll see. All right, let me grab. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the tallest ones of each, and I have a plate here, and this plate has some light strips in it. So over here on this side where the light strip is, I'm going to put the heavy cream. In the center, I'm going to do the buttermilk, and over here I'm going to do the regular milk. And we're going to see kind of how they stand up to each other. And then we'll call Bryant home from the farm. All right, so here is my heavy cream biscuit. Here is the buttermilk biscuit. And let's get a pretty, I don't think I'm going to like this, the regular milk one. Here is the regular milk. So here we go. They're kind of all even as far as height goes. I can't say that one is significantly taller than the other. So here we go so far. Let me call Bryant home and let's give this a taste test. While we're waiting for Bryant, let me show you the texture of each one. I've gone over and got another one. We still have our plate ready for us to taste test. Here, look at that steam coming up. This is the heavy cream one. Look at that. Oh my goodness. That looks beautiful. Here is the buttermilk one. It's definitely firmer, but still a pretty texture. And here is the regular milk one. Again, a beautiful soft crumb, but definitely more dense. Out of all of these, the inside of the heavy cream one seems the fluffiest. So, but what counts is the taste. Well, I've got him in here. We're going to taste test the biscuits. This is my 2-ingredient biscuits.
Right.
One, the traditional with heavy cream,
Okay.
buttermilk, and sweet milk.
Oh, comparison.
Comparison. So
right.
contestant number 1 is the heavy cream. Which do you want, the top or bottom?
Give me the bottom.
Bottom.
All right.
Okay. And we have some melted butter here and some apple butter. What do you want?
I'm gonna do apple butter.
I'm going with butter.
All right. I'll do half and half.
Okay.
Ready?
Delicious. It almost melts in your mouth.
Fluffy.
Fluffy, fluffy, fluffy. And believe it or not, that's the most dense dough we had. It's the heaviest dough.
Yep. All right, we'll try butter.
It's so good. Got you a little Pepsi too.
Tastes like Cracker Barrel.
It's so good. So good. You ready to move on to contestant number 2? This is buttermilk. This is made with buttermilk. It's a little bit drier looking to me.
Right.
Top or bottom?
I'll do bottom.
Okay.
And I'm going to do butter this time, not apple butter. Because I think apple butter...
You don't get the flavor of the biscuit.
Right. Took away.
All right. Here we go with the buttermilk one.
Here in the South, you use butter anyway, right? The flavor's great.
Delicious.
A
A little bit crustier,
little firmer.
firmer dough on the, especially the outside. The inside's still pretty fluffy. Not bad with buttermilk.
Nope, not at all.
Not bad. All right. Are we moving on? I need a drink too.
Excuse me.
This one, next one looks the driest to me of all of them.
It does.
But it only took half the amount of milk to make the dough.
You can just tell by the exterior. It
Yeah.
looks a little drier.
And it, like I said, it only took half the milk.
But it looks like the rise is more.
Well, I showed them. It looked like they were all about equal.
Okay.
The crumb inside is definitely firmer. I don't think I'm going to like this one.
Okay.
But I have a preconceived idea. So let me wait for the taste test.
There you go.
Thank you.
And this was regular milk?
And like I said, it only took half the amount of milk to make the dough, but it is definitely a drier biscuit. It's the one I like the least.
It's not a bad biscuit.
It would be great with gravy.
Yes.
Smother this with some sausage gravy.
Yeah. Yeah. Be delicious.
Yes.
It's not a bad biscuit, but I'm gonna
My favorite's the heavy cream.
lean toward the heavy cream.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So good.
The
I'm back on the heavy cream one. I picked it up.
The buttermilk one was good too.
This just melts in your mouth. The other you have to kind of chew a little bit.
All right, so that's the wrap up of the taste test. And you say?
I say heavy cream.
I say heavy cream. You heard it.
Go ahead.
You heard it right here on the Farming Pastor's Wife. The heavy cream 2-ingredient biscuits is phenomenal.
Hands down the best. Remember, if you don't have self-rising flour, it is 1 cup of all-purpose flour to 1.5 teaspoons of baking powder and 1/4 of a teaspoon of salt. Create your own self-rising flour and enjoy this. It is so very good. Thank you so much for joining us. And as my tagline says, remember, if the grease is hot enough, you can fry anything. Bye, y'all.
Bye, guys.